Hey everyone, welcome to the webinar. I'm Simon and this is Nick. Hiya. We're just getting set up, so we'll do the formal introductions in a second. But thank you for joining us. And we just see there's a whole bunch of people who are just logging in. So we're doing the usual thing, which is to make sure all the tech is working. So let's see, you should be able to see my screen and hear me. So if you wouldn't mind, there's a little section in the interface that you can type in questions. Would you mind just doing a comment in there to see if you can see my screen and you can hear me? Then we know it's all working. Oh, thanks, Eric. That's good.
Awesome.
It's good to have a sanity check on these things. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Lee. This is brilliant. Excellent. Good stuff. And we try, all systems a go. Thank you. So great. We try and keep these things to an hour, so we'll just do a little bit of intro for about a minute, and then we'll start at the top of the hour. And I'm Simon Walker. I'm the training director at Maxon and at Red Giant. And these sessions are based on the sort of content that we've typically been doing for the last few years for Red Giant customers. And so we've expanded it to all our Maxon friends as well. And I'm delighted to have Nick, who's one of our expert trainers. Nick Harauz, welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Simon. Great to be here.
Excellent. And we're going to be running through some more techniques of how to integrate and connect Cinema with some of the Red Giant tools. In this case, it's Universe. And we've got actually also inside the webinar software, there's a little section called Handouts. And if you look there, then you'll see a PDF that says Workflows for Mograph Designers. And that's the PDF that I've got up on my screen here, which is just showing the sessions and what we're doing. And here are the two sessions that we're talking about today. But if you missed yesterday's sessions or even this morning's one, then you can just click on the links inside the PDF, and as well as the registration links, they act as the link to the recording. So for example, for yesterday's sessions, if you wanted to watch either of those again, if you attended or if you watched them for the first time, then just click on the link. It'll say register for the session, but what it means is just click through and then you can view the recording. And also you'll get a link to today's recording automatically at about an hour after the end of the session. That's the shortest amount of time that the webinar software will let us do it. But so 1 hour after the session finishes, then you'll get that link. And also inside the PDF document are links to tomorrow's session where we talk more about compositing with elements that are created in Cinema without having to render, because this is compositing with Cineware as well, which is quite exciting. And also the questions box where some of you typed in already, that's the area to ask questions as we're going through. We'll have some time for some Q&A at the end, but what we'll do is if you've got anything that you'd like to ask or comment on as Nick's going through, please type a question in there and we'll try and answer those. And if it's relevant to what Nick's saying, I'll interrupt him, although I'll try not to interrupt you too much, Nick, during the session. But that's enough preamble. The important thing to say again is yes, we're recording this and you'll get the link afterwards. I think that's our most popular question. But in fact, I might type that into the chat box as well, just as we go along. And also any links that Nick talks about or any resources that Nick talks about, I'll put those into the chat box as well. And I'll put those into the email that follows up as well. So you got those twice. Great. Question from Eric. Great question. Do the two sessions tomorrow have different content? Yes. Each of the 3 days has different content. We just repeat it twice on the same day. So today is the session for Cinema and Universe, and tomorrow is Cinema and VFX. So today's using motion graphics techniques, and tomorrow is more compositing and tracking and animated elements into in Cinema and then transferring that over to After Effects. But we'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of the session. Great. Oh, you guys are awesome. Thanks, Nick. We appreciate it. No, you're awesome. Great. So let me chuck this over to Nick. I'm going to share my screen with you. Change presenter. Let's just set it over to you. Here we go.
Okay. Just waiting for that invitation to pop up, Simon. Let's just see here. There we go. It says show my screen. if everyone can see an After Effects interface, we are in good shape, as well as hear me. And if you
I can hear
can,
you and I
just
can see it, so that's good. So if
awesome,
somebody wants to just quickly type in, make sure that they can see it well and it all works, then we'll just get going.
excellent. And I'm now I've switched
Thanks,
over to
Michael.
Cinema 4D. Awesome,
We're
thanks,
set.
Mike. Um,
Thanks,
thanks
Lee.
so
Thanks,
much.
Richard. All right. Okay, I'll switch my webcam off for now, and I'll try not to interrupt you too much, Nick.
No problem. And thanks so much for having me again, Simon. And thanks everyone for joining me. No matter what time zone you're in, it's great for you to tune in. Just to tell you guys a little bit about myself, I am a expert trainer in a bunch of nonlinear editor systems, as well as in motion graphic applications such as After Effects, and also certified expert across the Trapcode, uh, across the Red Giant suite of products. So it's really a great pleasure to be here today and to talk about integrating workflows between Cinema 4D and After Effects, and looking at how we can use these tools together. So without further ado, I kind of wanted to build a bridge to some of the content that we covered yesterday first, and then we're going to go into the meat and potatoes of uh, today's exercise, which is looking at universe and how we can build universe effects to create some interesting heads-up display looks, but much, much more. So let me show you the example I have here in Cinema 4D first. It's a kind of a very simple camera move, a dolly, around some 3D text. To talk about this 3D text just a little bit, there is a sky layer, if I draw your attention over here to the elements that make up my scene, that is causing some reflection on the text. It's been extruded. Not to mention, the text itself also has a bulge deformer effect on it, kind of giving it a little bit of its distortion. So the end result of what I'd like to do is actually have lights, okay, trail or trace along each of these letters. Lights, as some of you might have seen yesterday, become extremely valuable in the Trapcode ecosystem and across some other Red Giant products as well. So if we can extract that data from Cinema 4D and use it inside of After Effects, this could be really beneficial to various workflows. So here's how we can get some, first of all, lights to trail across this text. The game here that we want to play is essentially we want to take our text and we want to make it editable. So I wanted to show you the hierarchy of how things are placed right now. The bulge deformer, which is causing the skewing here at the sides, is actually a child of the actual text object. And if I selected this extrude text, the object to make it editable is by pressing the C key. Once you press C, I'll just show you this change. We've got kind of text null group, the extruded text, and then the text spline. This is fantastic because now we can actually add a tag onto various lights and have those lights reference this text or a specific text character as a spline. Okay, I just undid that action for the reason that I already have a duplicated text layer down here that has those exact same elements showing. So we've got that spline. This is looking great. And I've already taken it amongst myself to create a series of lights and also name them appropriately based on the name of the letter that I want to attach them to. So let me draw your attention here to the M. It's a spotlight. And if I drag my little cursor here, you can see it's tracing the M. So how do we get here? One was to right click the light and choose animation tags, add an effect that I used yesterday, which is called align to spline. Once that tag is added, you'll see it here. The option is to feed this a spline path. And the spline path happened to be this text right here. Just dragged it there right into the spline text box. And then the next step was to actually animate it and also identify a character to animate on. So by default, it adds it to the first segment or character, which is given the designation 0. If I click on this button, I want you to notice that the light actually moves over to the A, followed by the inward spline of the A, followed by the K. So using this segment, you're able to identify which letter this light would be positioned. The next step under the align to spline tag is to animate the position value. And I'll just let you see that it's being animated from a value of 0% slowly to 100. If we take a look there at the spline tag. So over time, this is going to is keyframe to move from 0 to 100. And if I sort of just took this M, I'll stop playback and sort of scrub through it. With the M selected, we should see that the light is indeed moving. Let me make sure that it's mapped to the right letter. Cool. But yes, I took a bunch of these letters and mapped them to the various letters up here to use this data inside of After Effects, which is just so useful. So yesterday, we took this Cinema 4D file and using Cineware, we're able to import the Cinema 4D file, but we had to do an additional step, which is to take these lights and through the animation workspace, the timeline, bake these animations. However, there's another way to bring things into After Effects, which is creating an AEC file. So let's take a look at that. The first thing I want to do is go to my render settings and just show you how they're set up. Under output, I have a 1920 by 1080 file. And most importantly, under frame range, you can see that it's rendering all frames of my existing project from 0 to 120. The next important set of settings happen under the Save tab. One is you can kind of choose what type of format of a movie you want to bake out or render. I chose, for this case, just to be an MOV file, but you could choose an OpenEXR to demonstrate, basically export out an image sequence and also maintain an alpha channel. And then for the After Effects project, you want to go under these compositing project file settings. So we want to save a file. We want to save a target application to a target application such as After Effects and also include 3D data. If I just wanted to have the lights and not the text, I could just save a project file right now and not have to worry about this rendering out. But once these settings are set, my next step is to actually go over here to the play button and render using the picture viewer, which would then render out a movie file, as well as give me an AEC project file, which I can then bring into After Effects. So let me shut this down here in Cinema, and we'll head over here to the project panel in After Effects. I'll double click and just show you that I've already kind of created that AEC file. In fact, I have the Make It Move folder. You'll see here's an AEC file. That was the one that was created from that Cinema 4D project, and the baked MOV file over here with the move. So this is what I'd use to bring into After Effects. And what I get, because it's already inside of here, is a folder containing an After Effects composition, matching the appropriate dimensions as well as time, along with the baked movie. And it's here, I already have this conveniently in my timeline, and you'll see the data that's been extracted from that file. So you've got the MOV file here at the bottom. And if we take a close look here at my timeline, every single one of the lights that was in my Cinema 4D project, and a bonus, which is because we're not using Cineware, we don't have to bake those animations. So in fact, if I grab the M, you'll notice that that light itself, if I scrub through it, is traveling around the character, the spline of the character there. I could just continue to select each of these to show you that that does indeed travel across, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so what can we do now that we have this information or data? One thing that comes to mind, of course, is particular and DAO. And I would just encourage you, if you do have access to the link from yesterday, to check out some of those examples of what you can do to have Trapcode assets follow this. But another one that comes to mind is No Light Factory. There happens to be two versions of No Light Factory. One that's included in Universe, which is No Light Factory Easy. And then there's the full version of No Light Factory, which is included in the VFX Suite. And this is extremely, extremely robust, giving you a lot more options in terms of designing your lens flares, not to mention animating them without keyframes, along with other features like having it follow light paths, which is exactly what we want to do. So I'm going to press Command Y to create a new solid, which I'll call KLF for short for No Light Factory. Bring it to the top of my composition, just underneath my camera. And from the Effect menu, head down to the red giant VFX section. And under this section, choose No Light Factory. So you can see there that it's added on top of my layer, but I no longer see the text that's behind. What I'd like to do, first of all, is head to the rendering settings and make sure that unmult is checked. So if you're ever starting in No Light Factory, the full version in the VFX Suite, I recommend that you head first to the designer to see some of the possibilities that you have for lens flares. So let me hit the button over here at the side and just draw your attention to the bottom left-hand corner where it says Lens Flare Presets. Once I press this button, here are all of these various presets available. And we can go into a category such as anamorphic action and select a preset that catches our eye, such as this Devil's Tower look. I'll close out the preset browser and show you that with my mouse, I can easily kind of move this lens flare in this preview window. What makes No Light Factory so attractive also is the side here, the lens flare editor, where you have access to each of the elements, components that make up this lens flare. Say you were interested in finding out more information about this specific disk element. If I solo it, this is all I see. And at the bottom here are the controls for that element. So let's just come in here and I will increase its brightness to 0.9 and also just subtly change its color. I don't want to move too much away from the design, but just show you that that element by itself has been adjusted. And in the scope of the entire lens flare, all of the other colors maintained for each of my other components. Speaking of elements, there's a whole category of element presets over on the right-hand side. Draw your attention to the bottom right-hand corner. And these are just pre-designed elements that you could add to your lens flare, your preset, or you could start from scratch building along with these flare elements. One of my favorite features of them is that they include lens textures as a preset to add dirt or grime to your lens. So something that you could just add to inside of No Light Factory if you'd like. Okay, now that we've taken a tour of this designer, let's press OK. That updates. And let's attach it to a few of the lights that are here inside my composition. So I'm going to click on the Use Lights button. And by default, anything that's named light is what it attaches to. You can see light 1 is currently selected, and that's what it's attached to there. This is because of the light sourcing name. So just notice, hey, it's set to light, and that's why we're able to see that lens flare here. Now to move this to one of the moving lights, I'm actually going to go and click on where it says light. I'll move this over to the side here. My goal is to attach it to 2 of the E's. So I'll type in the word E and press OK. And by default, I've anything that is attached to that letter has been named. And you can see here that we've got 3 lens flares. And if I just play through this slowly, you can see that they're moving along that E path. A little strong, but hopefully this is bringing the point home. Now, I will come here and actually just switch this to maybe 1 letter, such as the A, and just show you that that will update accordingly, just attached to that 1A. Now you'll notice that this No Light Factory solid happens to be on top of everything here inside my composition. And maybe what I would love to have is for it to appear underneath this MOV file. By default, the type of MOV file that I had rendered out from Cinema 4D doesn't actually include an alpha channel. So if I toggled on my transparency grid, nothing's going to happen. It's solid black. No Light Factory will still take care of you. if you go over here to the obscuration settings, you can actually choose to look at the luminance of a layer. And I'll point this to the lights MOV file, and you'll notice it'll look at its luminance and use that as a form of element to have it hide behind it, or mostly hide behind it. This just brings up a lot of cool options you can do with lights or no light factory, and specifically all of the ability of what you can do with creating amazing, interesting light paths inside of Cinema 4D. So again, this is available in that full version. I'll come back here and just make the default name light again. We should see, I'll make sure it's with a capital L. Bad spelling on my part. And maybe a reset. Use lights, there we go. And I'll make sure unmult happens there. I wanted to show one more thing with these lens flares, and that is that you can auto animate them using the full version of No Light Factory. So here under the behavior settings, if we look at looping behavior, you've got these pre-existing sort of auto animated behaviors that you can add to your lens flare without the need to keyframe, such as blink. Now we can see temporarily throughout time, based on a cycle duration, that it is blinking over time, and what the maximum brightness is set to is how much it would essentially blink between, let's say, two values. You've also got flicker and pulse. Again, all of these kind of cool pre-built auto animations of your lens flare without any keyframes. And we can also combine this with edge behaviors, which would, if you moved your light close to an edge, have it react based on a width that you set up for the edges of your composition. You can see there I've increased the edge width quite a bit. And since this is fairly close to the edge of the comp, it's now also reacting based on a value and how much that edge width is. So lots of possibilities there, again, with light paths, and kind of building up from this from yesterday's webinar, which I would love you guys to check out. Cool. Okay, so let's talk about Universe, our main focus for today. I'm going to hop into my main comp here, just to show you what we'll break down is all of these elements which were made primarily using Universe minus a OBJ that was brought in from the content library of Cinema 4D. So the car that's rotating right there comes from Cinema 4D. It's an OBJ file. And what I did is I brought it into a Cinema 4D project and exported it as a wave OBJ because there was no animation to that car. In fact, I have this car in a separate composition just to sort of show it to you. And for the time being, let me actually turn off a few effects so we can just concentrate on the car. So what I did to bring this in and kind of give it its wireframe look is I used a plugin from the Trapcode Suite called Mirror. And if I twirl down its parameters and we look under the geometry tab, by default, the geometry options are a plane, and I set it to OBJ model. Mirror, like particular and form, have a series of OBJ presets that you can choose from. So if you want something quick and dirty to use, take a look at some of these Pixel Lab objects. They're pretty cool, not to mention some of the primitives that are available to you by default and also cloned objects. And then you have a custom section, and this is anything that you have personally brought in to Mirror. If I wanted to, I could add a new object, and this would allow you to search your system for an OBJ and bring it inside. Now, based on that, you could decorate this OBJ model in a variety of ways. One of the best ways to start off is to head to the material section. And I use just a simple material surface preset of a wireframe. And the reason it says custom is because I also added a reflectance under reflections and lighting, I added an environment map. There's a built-in set of them, which can give subtle reflections to your wireframe mesh based on a reflectivity amount that's up here. And this combination is what set it the surface preset to custom, because I mixed reflections and lighting along with an original material preset. Cool. So the reason it's rotating is because there's a camera here in the scene, which will automatically interact with mirror. And I added a camera orbit null, which if I press EE is animated with a time expression. Cool. Now, this brings us to the first universe effect, which we'll then look at a bunch of universe effects, but one of the first things I added was hollow matrix. You can see it here. Adds this lovely glitchiness and glow over top of this car. And I thought as a starting point, we should just add a fresh version of hollow matrix to the car just to kind of get familiar with the universe workflow. One thing that I love about universe compared to your regular After Effects workflow is that you don't have to play as much of a guessing game to what an effect is. So if you're used to After Effects, unless you've been to Bridge and seen some of the presets that are in there as thumbnails, a lot of times if you're getting familiar with effects, you're playing a guessing game. Oh, what does fractal noise do? So you add fractal noise and you play around with that effect and you become familiar with some of its possibilities. Universe offers a much more visual way to get familiar with a large library of effects that are great for both video editors and motion graphic designers, as well as VFX artists. In After Effects and Premiere, when you install Universe under the Window menu, if you head to Extensions, there's a red giant Universe dashboard, and that's already populated here in my scene. It's up here over here at the side. I'll just add it back in. There's the red giant Universe dashboard. And this shows you, number one, if you click on the word Universe, the entire collection of over 80 presets. Simon, am I correct? It's 85? 85 exactly?
It's 85 currently,
effects?
yes.
It's currently 85 effects, which I love that you said currently, because the truth is that quite often new effects are added to this library in this collection, which makes it even more useful, because whether it's a new effect or presets, there's a lot of places where you can start off to create some lovely visual designs. So how does Universe work in a nutshell? And I'll actually just add a solid because I want to kind of show the basic workflow. And I'll do this with a generator effect. The idea is inside the heads-up display, we could add, your default effect, but one of the benefits of Universe is your ability to search presets from this dashboard. And all you have to do is single click the image to the effect you're interested in. You'll see here Spectralicious adds some lovely multi-gradient background ideas. And if you liked any of these, such as Purple Haze, I actually used this yesterday, you can apply that preset, and here it is. It's here on the solid. If you were adding an effect like a blur on top of an image, you could literally just select from a preset blur. The amazingness of this is, though, this takes a lot of the guessing game out. You could head into a blur category. You could select single click the thumbnail to go to blur presets. And if you saw something that interested you, you could apply that preset.
Nick, would you mind just showing us how you opened up the dashboard itself?
Yes, I'll do that. Here we go. I'm going to close the panel. So once you install Universe, you go to the window. It's under Extensions. And here is the red giant Universe dashboard. All good?
Excellent, thank you.
No
just
problem.
Question on the line from Michael.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's how you open the red giant Universe dashboard. And by the way, if you have Premiere, Same workflow. You can go to the window menu, can head over to extensions and bring in that Red Giant Universe dashboard. So this is like the ultimate way to work with effects because first of all, you get these visual icons to kind of let you know some of the possibilities with that effect. And once you start diving into some of these categories, I'll go to one that I haven't used right now, but sometimes I think this is overlooked, Misfire. If I click on this, you'll see a bunch of different film scratch glitch effects that you could use on top of your video. Just gives you an idea of what can be done. And by the way, once you find one that you really like, mark it as a favorite and you're good to go. So that little star marks that effect as a favorite. Under my favorite category, I'll have the stylise misfire effects located here and my motion graphic favorite effects based on its category over here. Okay, so let's head to Hollow Matrix, which is an incredible effect. That's available in the stylise category, and we can see Hollow Matrix right here. And just note that there's a little bit of motion happening with my image that's behind it. And I want to show you what happens. I'll just actually click on here. Let's just see the amount of presets for Hollow Matrix. Not a bad place to start. And this is just one effect out of 85. I'll click on Prometheus. And let me make sure a layer is selected to apply to. And what it's done is actually it's overridden the existing Hollow Matrix effect that I have here, but I'm going to turn it on and show you that once I do turn it on, my car by default disappears. Because this references time-based effects, we need to do something here if we've added it on top of other effects, which is click this button here under the Hollow Matrix effects called disable time effects. So now you'll see Hollow Matrix being generated on top of the car, a little strong, but it has by default a series of controls at the top of the effect, which are kind of your overall controls for all of the effect parameters that are available down here. I could, of course, increase the amount of damage that's happening by increasing this amount, also increasing more glitchiness, or let's say random parameters by increasing the more often amount. Now, another thing I could do is if I find that this is too strong, which it clearly is just use a blend with original command to dial back on the strength of that effect if that was still of interest to me. Now, if I wanted to customize this further, that's where I head into the effects section. And in the effects section here, you'll see a ton of parameters. But before we look at all of these parameters that are available, let's just give a breakdown of how amazingly these are categorized. So anything that's checked, okay, is currently active. So colorization is active. Gave it a new color on top of the mirror effect. My two glow and secondary glow are also active. The controls for the active effects or also inactive effects are underneath. So if we look here, we've got glow settings, one being threshold, which of course I can dial back on. We also have a glow intensity. So if I wanted to back off on that amount, I could bring it down to 0.5. And the same thing, if you activate scan lines, the settings for scan lines are just underneath, and you can adjust these scan lines according to how you'd like this to look. So this is one of those stylistic effects that you have so much control over. Look at all of these parameters that you can check, but the same application happens for how it's structured. You activate a given parameter, and then you adjust its settings. And there you have it. So that's Hollow Matrix for you. I'm going to undo some steps to kind of get back to just prior to where I added that Prometheus effect and make sure that disable frame time is selected. I didn't quite get there. Turn this universe layer off and turn the default hollow matrix that I had back on. Okay, cool. Let's hop into the main HUD display, and I want to sort of break this down, and I'm going to show you guys a few things of how they look by default, and then we'll break down the specific treatments that happen in this composition. So the background actually consists of a series of universe effects. So here's the preview. So if we take a look, let me actually head to my project panel, and under my universe logos, I'll just turn off the proxy temporarily so we can see the original After Effects composition. There we have it. And I'll solo the background. The background itself, which is a solid layer, consists of 2 HUD components. So that's under the motion graphics section, 1 hollow matrix element, and 1 screen text. I'll just turn these all off and just build them up so you can see the individual files there. Okay, I have a new comp, new solid inside this comp, and I want to take a good look at heads-up display because it's an incredible effect with a wide variety of presets. If you click on the motion graphic category, here's HUD components. You can already see I've marked it as a favorite. If I single click on this, here are the presets available. If my memory serves me correct, Simon, there was also like 5 or 6 HUD component presets that were added on version 3.2, which was November or December last year. Is that correct?
3.1 was last year, 3.2 was earlier this year, but yes, they've got a whole bunch of them have been added. So there's the extra flexibility with them. And it's also worth noting that if you save these as a preset in After Effects, then that preset will work identically in, say, Avid or Premiere or Final Cut or even Resolve.
Yes, because Universe is not just in the Adobe ecosystem, but Final Cut, Resolve. If you have those cross-platform workflows, you can build and save a preset, actually your own preset to the Universe library, and then ship it out and export it to someone else as well. It's pretty amazing. I'm going to select this crosshair preset. I'm going to press Apply Preset. We can see that that HUD component has been applied to my composition. Not to mention, if I pressed U on this solid layer, no keyframes are here. In fact, all of the animation are from parameters inside of HUD components that you can adjust the values to kind of get these oscillating type of animations. Now, let's actually reset HUD components and just show you how it looks by default. So if you don't choose one of these lovely, pretty presets that are available here, this is what you'll start with. But this is a great example to break down how Universe, how Hud's Up Components works. So it's made of 4 elements, and I'm going to twirl down the first element section. You'll see that the element type is set to measure arc. I could choose another type of preset here, like a crosshair, from this drop-down list. And then I also have a Browse Elements option just above it, which shows me some of the element types that I can choose from. I'll choose a compass, apply that, and we can see here, we've got this lovely compass file. Its color is based on this initial color over here, not to mention some glow parameters. I'll change that glow. And of course, I can dial its opacity down. The real power starts to happen when you dive down into each of these categories, especially animation. Drawing a parallel here to No Light Factory, we saw that we could easily, under the behavior section, flicker, blink it, and wiggle its parameters. Here under animation type, you've got the same type of kind of oscillating controls. Let me show you one of them. I'm going to choose Orbit 2D, and you'll see automatically, just me clicking on that, with nothing else, it's now orbiting in 2D space. This animation is based on a speed and an amplitude value. I'll dial back down the amplitude value to 10. Did I just speed that up? I'll actually maybe dial it up. And I'll dial the speed down to like 0.5 to slow it down. Maybe even 0.2. It's worth going into these animations and exploring items, even things such as pulse scale. Maybe that's a little much, but whole idea is that it's pulsing the scale based on an amplitude value. So again, this is one element. And by the way, the next kind of important I would say super powerful section, you've got a bunch of transform settings for repositioning and scaling this inside your composition, but it happens to be the ability to take this element and clone it. So here, I'm actually going to add 4 clones of this compass. And nothing changes when I do that because I have to do something in terms of the position of this item that I've repeated. And I'm going to just drag out these clones here in the x-axis. Can't quite see them just because some of them are off screen. So I'll head back to my original transformation settings and drag the original element over here to the side. So we can see those repeated 4 elements plus the original, all doing this lovely pulse scale animation. In fact, let me just pulse its opacity instead. Then if I need to, decrease the scale of the original to then fit all of these repeated elements in this particular example. Now, this is one element. You've got 3 more. So let's go into element 2, and I'll add a pointer. You'll see that a pointer is added here. And it's linked to the original animation in terms of its position, but we want to probably add the ability to have its own blink, not to mention do a few things to have it match the transform settings of the original element. Each element also has its own clone section, so you could increase the clones that are there as well. So you have multiple items spread out here for your components. Super useful for heads-up, of course, display design, but just for general After Effects motion graphics and the need of shapes too. So that was used inside my composition. So I'll head back to the main HUD and turn off 2 of these effects so we can focus on the HUD component effects. One was a preset actually from the library. And the big difference with this effect that was a preset that I used was changing the animation type as well as its color. So I'll just twirl down some of the elements I use, such as the measured arc, noticing that they are animated using the orbit 2D rotation. And then I added another version of heads-up components, heads-up display component here, using another preset, altering its scale, so it scales up the entire frame, changing its opacity. And I played around with a few of the animations, such as the crosshair here, which is being driven by an animation value that oscillates this horizontally. You can see the speed and the amplitude, and I'll actually just increase the amplitude to show you it's now going to travel further along the horizontal axis. In fact, too much that it's going off screen. Let me dial that back down to a shorter amount. Maybe this will show what's happening there to this crosshair on the bottom portion of the screen. So yeah, that was added. And then on top of these 2, here's a hollow matrix effects to add some digital glitch to that and dirty up this design, followed by an overlay layer of universe screen text. And in universe, I would highly recommend exploring the text category. A lot of these text effects, especially screen text, is great for populating your composition with a ton of text from scratch versus using your default text tool that you have to type in word by word. You've got this populated code text right away. If you need to, it gives you this pre-existing list, and if you click on Edit Text, you'll enter a menu where you could enter in your own text into that field, as well as a series of lines. Now, by default, these lines, if we look at the beginning of the animation, they shift up. In fact, let me just turn off the before layers so we can see what's happening here. So you can see here that one by one, each line is revealed. And in fact, some of this text is actually masked out. I just want to show this, that every effect in After Effects, by the way, has these compositing options. So what I did, if I press Shift M, is I drew a mask on this solid layer, as well as if I press Shift F, you can see that it's been feathered by 140 pixels. Underneath this universe effect and its compositing options, I simply clicked on this button and used that mask 1 as a reference. With that set up, that is why we see that part of this text has been masked out, and that's so it doesn't draw too much attention away from the middle car image inside my composition. So that's the build-up there of the background elements. So this was then combined with the car head here in the foreground. And we're going to lead it to the next effect that's just on top of this, which is called Progreso. What I love about Progreso, which is also available inside the motion graphic category, is it does something really well, and it's simplistic in its nature. It basically creates progress bars. And who doesn't need progress bars for a variety of different motion graphic as well as video examples? Just a super useful tool. If I head over to the new universe composition that I was in previously, I'll just show you a default example of Progreso. The main control is this progress bar, which you can animate from a 0 value to 100. Inside of Progreso, you get a bunch of default chart type options. So if I were to select something like linear sequence, which I used in the main composition, this set of parameters are down here. So you'll see that based on whatever you select, it actually twirls down the parameters, super useful, of the element, the chart type that you selected. So here with the linear sequence, I've got values for the total width of the bar, not to mention the segment width, the height, and the list goes on. Just above that are options for the type of text you're using and the style of text. We can choose between numbers and time. We can also change the text to follow the progress bar, which shifts the text upward. And you'll notice now if I drag the progress bar across, the text follows really nicely. Time values, which I've set the number style to, are based on this format here. Let's choose a 12-hour clock instead. And then you can choose a rate for which this is calculated by. And of course, all of these values are keyframeable, but your main one being this progress bar here at the top. So I did something interesting with my progress bar. If we head back to the main HUD composition, and I'll just solo the progress bar, I actually used a cosine expression, which is an expression that oscillates between two values. Roughly, this is what this expression does. The cool thing about it is if you get used to it, it's fairly simple in how to control it. So I'll show you this expression by pressing EE, and you'll see exactly the progress bar being controlled by expression. It's lit in right here in red. And this is the expression. It's math.cosine. And a couple things are happening here. Number one is it's being time is what's being used to drive the cosine. The time of the After Effects current time indicator. It's being multiplied so that it moves faster. And it is being times by a value of 50. Also, I've added a value of 50 so that this animates between the progress value of 0 and 100. And it does this back and forth across your composition. Now, I want to make a little change. I want to make a change to the time inside the brackets, just to show this for you, to see that it speeds up how fast this oscillates over time. I like to think about the number in the middle of this math cosine, in the middle of the bracket, to be how often. So think about this as numbers how often, if you ever use the wiggle expression. And the value, the first value here on the outside, to be how much. And that's where we get this sort of oscillating cosine effect of our progress bar. This is available from the expression menu under your various math options. You've got a cosine as well as a sine, which are just equal ends of a traveling wave, or opposite ends of a traveling wave. Okay, a little bit erratic. And by the way, how is everyone doing out there? Everyone good, Simon? Can everyone still hear me? Have I started to chat to myself?
Yes, yeah, that's great. Thank you, Nick. The other thing to mention about what next means stacking up these effects on top of each other on a particular comp is that Universe is designed to be operating on the GPU. So that's why you're able to get those and play around with them and get pretty decent playback, as Nick's been getting here.
Yeah, it's super fast, and it's just great. It allows you to experiment with effects really quickly in both Premiere and After Effects, which I love. And I've stacked quite a few on this final example. So yeah, here another version of Hollow Matrix was added just to the actual progress bar here. And then there were a couple layers added in terms of adjustment layers. There is a Texturize effect. And I just want to show this to you independently before we kind of see what's happened here, but it dirties up this heads-up display super nicely. And dirtying things is a great thing to do when it comes up to heads-up components, just to add a little bit of, I dare say it, but texture. If I go here to the stylise category, I've added this default progress bar inside of here, and we'll head to Texturize. Let me make sure a layer is selected. By the way, this effect, what you should know by default, has a mask that's automatically applied to it. So it doesn't actually add texture to the center of the frame. Its blend mode by default is also on multiply to mix into whatever you've added it to. But if I change this to none, you'll see it fills up that progress bar that's underneath it. And it just kind of ignores that mask. In fact, just for sake, I will add this to a solid. There we go. So here is the grunge texture that you can start with, okay? And you can choose from a series of preset textures, not to mention if you click on choose a preset over here, come over here and select something like splintered bricks or weathered paint. And by playing with the blend mode of this item, you can see here that it's going to mix in specifically with the layer that's been added to. So it's better to kind of show this on the Progreso text here. Sort of show that to you when there is no mask enabled, the default texture being applied. And it just adds a little bit of dirt on top of these elements, which is pretty amazing. You can scale up those textures or scale them down depending on what you're looking for. And of course, play around with the overall texture opacity, its contrast, and even add a bit of blur for certain treatments. Heading back to my main HUD, you'll see that that universe texture has been applied, and I'll just twirl this down to show that a weathered rock look was added. Not to mention that there is a mask here, so it's not actually adding dirt to the center of the car there. Sort of feathers out here at the edges. And then just on top of that is a chromatic aberration effect. This is awesome for adding a little bit of distortion. And the way that I used this was to distort more around the edges of the frame. You can see some RGB separation really nicely. There's a master distortion value that you can use to make this go even further. A scale to distortion, as well as separate controls for the distortioning happening in the red, the green, and the blue channel that you can mix in with a form of lens distortion, as well as adding blur. Now, this effect is available under the distort category. I'll just deselect this, click on that effect to show you that, yeah, there's a bunch of presets that you can use. Let me actually just get rid of this one so we can add a fresh one to the layer. And you can experiment with these different forms of chromatic aberration to just add a little bit more flair to your After Effects and Cinema 4D projects. Okay. So hopefully this sheds some light on how great it is to use Universe in terms of being able to explore presets visually, add them to elements that you bring in from Cinema 4D, and also build elements from scratch. And I have to say, items such as, again, heads-up display components, Progreso, while not covered in this example, there's also an effect called the Raygun, which is great for creating replicated shape pattern backgrounds. These tools are meant for ease of use, as well to give you just a ton of options in terms of control, along with auto animating parameters in there that you can utilize without necessarily keyframing in some of these effects.
Great stuff, Nick. We had a comment from Eric just about it might be wise to let people know that the cosine returns -1 to 1, which is why we're needing to multiply 50 and add 50.
Correct. Yes. So, and thanks for mentioning that, Eric. So the progress line is from 0 to 100. So what happened is if I just added without adding the plus 50, it was actually oscillating between a value of 50 and -50 that didn't exist in Progreso. So, but yeah, that addition there is why I added that additional value in order to have it oscillate correctly.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Nick. Also another question in about adding custom textures into Texturizer. At the moment, those ones are the ones that ship with it, but this has been a feature request we've had a number of times, so we're looking into being able to add your own custom textures in there. They need to be large resolution textures. The ones in there are 2K and they are tiling ones. So that's what the thought was behind the original implementation of this. But we've had that question so many times, so that we're actively looking into it. But thank you for that. That is a good point to make. Cool. By the way, Nick, would you mind just sharing your screen back to me?
Of course, yes. Give me 1 second.
I just wanted to point out a resource.
I'll find you there. I found you. You should be getting that link back right now, Simon.
Got it. Yes, great. So I just wanted to say thank you again for sharing all these techniques, Nick. We really appreciate having an insight into how you approach your creative projects and so on. Yes. But this page here I'm showing, this creative111.com, is where Nick hangs out quite a bit to run training sessions. Do you want to say a bit about that, Nick?
Yeah, so I started, I have a bunch of training on LinkedIn Learning, but I started a training company with a fellow instructor by the name of Ian Robinson. He does a lot of After Effects training, and you might have heard his name. We're starting to offer courses through our website. We have one right now on Photoshop and After Effects techniques if that's of interest to you. But we're also just starting up a YouTube page and populating that with content. So that's something that you can check out too. And we want to offer tips and tricks for a variety of different disciplines. And would love, if you guys would love to connect, find me on LinkedIn, reach out, and I would love to show various workflows that you find to be of need for your particular discipline. And so I'd love to hear from you. But yes, we have
one
course
request
content
already.
We have course content coming out in Premiere next, a 24-hour Premiere course, and a few others in the works as well. But we'd love to hear from you, both for free and paid content.
What Drake's been asking for some specific universe, some deep dive on universe and novel ways to use it. So that could be a good request for that.
Okay, and I think I can tease this. There is a universe class in the works with LinkedIn Learning that will be available sometime in the fall.
Excellent. Oh, great stuff.
Don't quote me on that, but definitely 2020, but fall is the estimated time.
Nice. Oh, I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. Another request for the name of your YouTube page.
It is Creative 111, but spelt 111. And then the exact page, hold on. This is a good thing to know.
Can you type it in the chat box there? I think you've got access to the chat box, don't you?
I can totally chat it. I'll leave a hyperlink here.
If you put that there, I'll add it to the links inside the email, the follow-up email.
And I am chatting away. There we go. Just added.
Excellent.
Well, I sent it to organizers, but I think that you might be able to. Hold on. If I go organizers and panelists only, that should do this one. There we go.
Okay, I'll type it again here to the audience. Excellent, fantastic stuff.
Yes.
And also, what I was going to mention is that you'll get a recording of this session automatically because you're registered, and that PDF inside the handouts area allows you to register for tomorrow's sessions as well as looking back to the previous ones and getting the recording for those too. So please feel free to check those out. Awesome. And thank you to Drake. Do you stay safe as well? And that goes to everybody. We really appreciate you spending this time with us and carving out this time of your day. So because there's lots going on, we know that. So thank you for spending this time. And if you've got any follow-up questions about sessions, or if you want if let's say you're working at home and you previously have had access to work licenses, we have mechanisms to be able to get them to extend them to help you work at home if you're doing that. So please let me know at simon@redgiant.com. And thank you, Lee. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Richard. We appreciate it. And thank you again, Nick. Thank you for sharing our stuff. And do you want to just give a quick kind of teaser about the sorts of things that we're looking at tomorrow in the VFX Suite and the compositing techniques that we're doing?
Yes, I'm very excited for tomorrow too. We're actually going to start to look at a little bit of simple character rigging using a new tool that's available on your iPhones from Maxon called Moves. So what's really cool is you can use your phone to record movements in highlight scenarios, and I'd recommend your phone being on a tripod. I think it's there's something to mention about that. It is an iPhone and it has to be 10 or above because of the depth camera that's on those phones. That's what it's using to create a little bit of depth with your character. But you can take this data, it's a free download, and you can bring that information of someone moving and then attach it to a character. So we'll look at that. We'll look at taking a character that's moving, track it to a scene using the tracker inside of Cinema 4D. And we're going to take that data, bring it into After Effects, and use VFX Suite, the flagship tool called SuperComp, to integrate it a bit better and super quickly.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that would be really interesting to see that, because Moves has only been out a couple of weeks now. So that's nice to be able to then fit that into your workflow.
Yes. Yes, so that should be pretty good.
Richard's asking what the name of the iPhone app. It's Moves. Moves by
Moves by
Maxon. That's the
Maxon.
official.
You
Yeah.
could do a search on the App Store. Yeah, if you do Moves by Maxon, you'll find it. Yeah, pretty great. There's something you have to
And,
download. We'll cover tomorrow inside of Cinema 4D as well to see the information.
and a question from Nick Tengri, will it go to Samsung? They're looking at it, or the development team are looking at it. And partly, as Nick mentioned, the idea is that because of the physical characteristics and the technology inside the iPhone, that was the one that they looked at first. But
yeah,
yes, you're right. That would be great to have it on other ones, wouldn't it? Yes.
yes.
Great. Okay. Thank you for bearing with us. I know we've run over slightly, but we appreciate you spending this time. And please feel free to register for tomorrow's session using that PDF document, or even looking back at the recordings. So, and
Thanks,
we
everybody.
appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully see you on next week and on next one. And thanks for all your feedback. I really appreciate it. All right. Take it easy. Cheers. Bye.